Hi, welcome to this week's Fundraising Friday. This week we're talking about indirect cost rates. You may have seen in some applications, particularly state or federal grant applications, that they will or will not allow you to ask for indirect costs. And you might wonder, what are they talking about? Put quite simply, the indirect costs are the very real costs that it takes for you to run your programs, but that you cannot directly attribute to the program itself. It's things like the lights, your insurance, the heating or air conditioning, the time of your finance department to process that check, to pay the bills, and to pull the reports that you're going to need to report on the financial aspect of your organization. You're going to have to pay those, but if all they'll pay are the direct costs, things like your program staff and your supplies, then you're just going to have to eat those indirect costs. So there's generally two ways in which the government will pay you for indirect costs. One is they will set a de minimis rate, and they will say in the NOFO or the RFP, we will pay a rate up to, and it's generally like 10 or 15%. And which means that once you figure out the direct costs of your programs, you can add another 10 or 15% to pay for those other expenses that you incur. Look very carefully at their definition of direct costs. Sometimes they exclude things like equipment purchases or payments to your participants. But that's free money. And if they're allowing you to take that, I highly recommend that you do so. The other thing that you can do is have a negotiated rate with the agency that you do most of your business through. That is, if you work primarily with your state education organization, or if you work with, say, HHS at the federal level to get most of your grants, you can work with them to negotiate an indirect cost rate. That rate tends to be accepted across government entities. Basically, what they will do is send you reams of paperwork that you need to fill out that account for all of your expenses. Based upon that, they run a formula and they come back to you and say, your indirect cost rate is X. You can use this with any grant that allows you to claim an indirect cost rate. Often those are much higher than the 10 to 15% de minimis rate. So if you're getting a lot of public money, it's often worth the time to get a negotiated rate. Now, next time you see a grant application that allows you to take an indirect cost rate, do so. It's free money. Otherwise, you're just leaving that on the table, and that money can help pay for your operating expenses. That's this week's Fundraising Friday. Thanks. Have a great weekend.